Hello, and welcome to SETI Live. I'm your host, Beth Johnson, Communications Specialist here at the SETI Institute. Welcome to our viewers from around the world. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please let us know where you are watching from. And also welcome to listeners on the podcast version of SETI Live, available on most podcast platforms. Before we get too far into things today, we have a giveaway. We have been gifted with several copies of the SETI board game. It literally is just called SETI. It's awesome. If you want to enter into that, click the link in the chat or go to the link on screen to enter. We will announce our first winner during next week's live stream. So yeah, good luck, everybody. And now on with the show. Saturn's largest moon, Titan, is a world of methane rivers and lakes, icy boulders, sandy dunes, and as I recently learned, a vast subsurface ocean. But could this distant world harbor life? Well, a new study by Dr. Antonin Affholder, now a fellow at ETH Zurich, suggests that Titan's ocean might support life, but only in the tiniest of amounts, making it incredibly hard to find. Today, I am joined by Dr. Affholder to talk about Titan and what this research means in our search for life beyond Earth. Welcome, Antonin, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So, okay, let's just jump in with a quick icebreaker. Have we found, is there life on Titan? Do we know this for certain yet?
No, we don't.
Okay. There, you've all heard
For
it.
that, we have to break the ice first to actually know it.
Exactly. There we go. So let's talk about Titan then. So for anybody in our audience who might not be familiar, and I'm pretty sure most everybody in our audience is, can you paint a picture of Titan? What makes it so unique compared to other moons in the solar system?
So Titan is a little bit of everything at the same time, right? It's a relatively large moon, almost the size of a planet. It has a surface, a solid surface with a dense atmosphere, which is not typical of moons that we find around Jupiter and Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has this subsurface ocean of liquid water underneath. So at the same time, it belongs to the family of icy moons, like Europa, like Enceladus, and it belongs to this class of planet-like objects by the fact that it has this surface. It's also the only place in the solar system that we know of right now that has lakes and rivers.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it's not lakes and rivers of liquid water, but still.
But still.
Mm.
So how has Titan become such an interesting or exciting or fascinating target in this search for life? Like, what has led to Titan? Is it just the liquid on the surface, or are there other reasons that we think it could have life?
So it's been obvious for a long time now that Titan has a organic rich surface, so a lot of organic molecules made out of carbon and hydrogen and other atoms in its atmosphere on its surface. Its atmosphere rich with these organic molecules is sort of reminiscent of what could have been the atmosphere of the early Earth. So that sparked a lot of interest for Titan, for people who are interested in the origin of life, stuff like this. There's also people trying to look into what could happen in those rivers and lakes of hydrocarbons, of methane. Possibly those could be also environments interesting for very, very alien life. But more recently, it became clear that there was also a liquid water ocean under the surface. And that's interesting to a different degree because liquid water, of course, we like to see, as all life that we know of on Earth lives and performs chemistry in liquid water. So that's for sure a lot of interest. And when you combine that with the presence of organic molecules, which could be sources of foods, we as humans, we consume organic molecules to obtain energy and nutrients. So yeah, with these ingredients, we have something that can be very interesting for the search of life in the universe. And really on those two fronts, the origin of life question and extant life that could exist, for example, in the ocean.
Titan has become so fascinating to me. I mean, just like I said, I only recently learned about the subsurface ocean. I was not aware. I knew about the surface water or surface liquid. It's not water, the surface liquid. but I did not know that there was like an actual subsurface ocean going on. So that's really fascinating to me. I want to talk some more. I want to get into your research, but I want to welcome people in from where they're watching. So let's see, we've actually had quite a few things. Let's see, we've got people watching from Sweden, from New York, New Jersey, from the Netherlands, from Germany, from Louisiana, from Arizona, another one from Germany, Scotland, and Vancouver, Canada. So welcome in, everybody. Thank you again for joining us today. All right, let's talk about the research that you did. So your team modeled fermentation as a possible metabolism for Titan. Can you explain what fermentation is in this instance and why you chose it for Titan?
So I'll start with what is fermentation in general. So fermentation is a truly fascinating biological process. You and I, when we consume foods, we need to use oxygen to burn that foods and extract energy from that. Basically, it's combustion. Fermentation is different in that it doesn't require that additional molecule to perform the combustion that we do. It doesn't require oxygen. It just requires the organic molecule and reacts it with itself to obtain energy. So specifically, we're looking at reactions, chemical reactions that we call redox reactions, in which electrons are transferred. And those reactions, they need electron donor and an electron acceptor. In the case of respiration, what we do, the oxygen, O2, is the acceptor. And in case of fermentations, the organic molecule is both the donor and the acceptor of electrons. So that's a very neat trick that biology can perform. And of course, that makes it, one of the simplest metabolic reactions being this class of reactions that organisms use to extract energy. So it's a very, in a way, simple. The chemistry itself is not quite simple, but it requires only the food source and nothing else, right?
Right.
The limit to that is you can't do fermentation of any organic molecule. It's only specific molecules that can be fermented, right? So when we approached this question about what metabolism specifically we wanted to look at for Titan's habitability, we were stuck between those two problems. Fermentation, on the one hand, is a simple metabolism, has existed for a long, long time on Earth, so presumably easy to evolve, and it does not require us to make too many hypotheses or assumptions about what happens at Titan. Once we focus on one molecule that is the food source, is the only thing that we need. We don't also have to look at other molecules that would react.
Right.
So for example, for respiration, that would be O2. It's virtually certain that there is no O2 to speak of in Titan's ocean, but there exist other molecules that could perform similar roles. Iron, for example, could be used, or sulfur. Those things can be used also to perform respirations. But if we look at fermentation, we look at only one molecule, the organic molecule. If we look at respirations, even if they use iron or sulfur, then we open this whole new door to other hypotheses that are not constraints of how much iron could there be or how much sulfur could there be.
Okay.
So it is we thought it was the parsimonious way to go about it, was to be conservative, selecting a metabolism that's very common, evolved very early, and requires us to do the minimum amounts of hypotheses.
Okay, that makes sense. So something that has existed a long time and is relatively simple. You don't have to get into too many different assumptions and moving pieces and things that you have to control for. So
and also, if I may, it also allows us to focus really on the potential for habitability of Titan, given by the abundance of organic molecules there. We really focus on this aspect of Titan's habitability. We ask the question, to what extent Titan's organic inventory makes it an interesting place for habitability. We're not looking at other stuff which could exist, but we really ask the question about the organic aspects of Titan.
So in this research, how did you actually calculate the survivability of life somewhere so alien like Titan? What is the calculation on that? What does the math look like? I mean, not specifically, but what are you looking at as like these are the things that we had to consider?
So we took an approach that was on the one hand empirical and on the other hand theoretical. So the empirical approach was first to look at what exists on Earth. We look at organisms that perform fermentation, in this instance, the specific fermentation of glycine. I didn't explain why we focused on that, but we can do that later. So organisms that do this reaction, all of them that we know on Earth, where do they live? What physical and chemical conditions do they inhabit or tolerate? And then we overlay that with the conditions that presumably exist in Titan's ocean. When I say conditions, physical and chemical conditions, we have to focus on a very, very limited set of, environmental variables.
Right.
In this case, it would be temperature, pH, so acidity, and pressure to some extent. So what we saw is that there is a little bit of overlap between, known life habitats for this specific kind of life and the habitats that are expected to exist inside the ocean.
Okay.
So that's one thing. That's the empirical arguments. And then we have theoretical arguments. From researching life on Earth, we have an idea of how much energy expenditure a cell undergoes at a certain temperature or at a certain pH. And then we put this number in front of the number of how much energy it can acquire. So that's also constrained by temperature, chemistry, etc. And then we look at, we compare those two energy levels. If the intake can be greater than the expenditure, then we have a theoretical argument to say that maybe the cell can support itself and even divide into other cells.
Okay.
So that's the methodological.
So what surprised you most about the results of the study? What got your attention? What made you go, wow, that's not what I was expecting? Or heck, that's what I was expecting.
Yeah, so really that results about life, the population, the size of the population that we estimate being so low was at the same time a little bit of a surprise, but the more you work on something, the less surprising the outcome becomes, because it makes sense in the end when you obtain your results. So it was surprising because we predict that this specific fermentation, glycine fermentation, might only sustain about a few kilograms, a few pounds of organic matter in living form. So all the cells.
So when you say tiny amount, you are not kidding when it comes to like
no.
relative size of Titan and the biology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would call that negligible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a surprise, but at the same time, it makes sense when you look at, for example, on Earth, ecosystems that existed before life learned how to use the energy from the sun to perform photosynthesis. The total mass of these ecosystems before we had this innovation in the biosphere was very, very low compared to today's levels. It's very likely that an observer going to the early Earth billions of years ago, trying to find life, would not find it. At least not if they are in the same mindset as we are as humans right now. Because you go to the early Earth, you go to the surface, there's nothing on the surface. You scoop up a little bit of water on the surface ocean, there's nothing there. It's burned to a crisp by the UV light. In fact, you probably only find life in very, very local spots at the bottom of the ocean, hydrothermal vents. So you'd have to do a lot of random sampling to encounter one of these hotspots. And Titan might be similar to that. But It doesn't have the potential that the Earth has, of course, because there's no light coming to the ocean, and even the light that comes to the surface is very, very weak compared to what we get on Earth. So yeah, it's hard to give a clear cut, result. Is it negligible? Is it not negligible? We don't know how prevalent is life typically on the planet.
That's
Maybe it is that
again,
the Earth has just a lot of life, and typically we find only a little bit.
yeah, it's one of those, again, we have one sample planet that has life on it, and that's the type of life, the development of life we have to compare everything else to. And yes, that makes it very biased in what we're looking for. So, we're looking for stuff that we understand to be life, and under similar circumstances. So, does all of this that you have done, does this make Titan more interesting, less interesting as a target for life, or just differently interesting?
So yeah, one other thing, of course, is that we look only at this specific facet of habitability, right?
Mm-hmm.
It only goes up from there. If you consider other molecules as food source, etc., your expected biomass goes up and up. So what we have is some sort of minimum estimate, right? So that doesn't constitute an argument for Titan not being interesting. Instead, it sheds light on what should we focus on to move on from there. So it is interesting, but it is interesting in a way where we should focus on local environments instead of just assuming that a global ocean is in general an interesting place. It's not enough to say, oh, there's a global ocean and there's a little bit of food in there. We really need to do more planetary exploration and understand how this environment is divided in sub-environments, which might be more interesting than just a bulk ocean. So I think our work is an argument to push research for whether or not hydrothermal vents might exist at Titan's seafloor, or what happens at the sea and ice shell interface, etc.
Makes sense. I have more questions about the possibility of future missions, and I promise everybody, we will talk about Dragonfly. If you have questions for Antonin, please put them in the comments. We are tracking those, and I will get to those in a few minutes. So okay. Do you think Titan is a better sort of chemistry lab for prebiotic molecules? Or do you think that we could find this very small amount of biology there if it existed? Which do you think Titan would lean toward?
It's hard to tell because I'm not an expert on prebiotic chemistry. I
Fair
actually
enough.
know very little about prebiotic chemistry, and I'm sure that prebiotic chemistry people will tell you that it is an awesome lab for prebiotic chemistry, and I trust them. It's probably it. As for traces of extant life, I wouldn't be too pessimistic about it. It's probably still one of the most likely places in the solar system that we know of right now, or in the current level of our knowledge for extant life or even past life traces. Because one other thing is that low biomass does not necessarily mean weak signatures of life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you only have a few kilograms of organisms living at Titan, it's probably going to be hard to find the cell or the smoking gun evidence. Now, that doesn't take away the ability for life to change the environment globally, deplete certain elements, synthesize certain molecules, especially if you give it billions of years.
Right.
I was mentioning earlier that biosphere of the Earth. So that's actually a project I was part of years ago, where we constrained what would be the mass of that pre-photosynthetic ecosystem, global ecosystem on Earth, and that mass would be low, but the traces, the signatures left in the atmosphere by those ecosystems is still significant. When we simulated that planet, with and without those early ecosystems, the atmosphere was drastically different.
Hmm.
Now, something similar might be happening at Titan. Even a tiny biosphere might globally change concentrations of, I don't know what molecules, but that's something that we could explore for sure.
All right, so I want to talk about Dragonfly and where this all kind of fits in, but I want to welcome in people one more time here. Let's see, because we had some more places. We had Texas, California, England, Mexico. I thought I saw more. Another Germany, Uruguay. Okay, so definitely have the global audience going for us today. Okay, so let's talk about Dragonfly, because I don't know about anybody else. Well, I know about a few people, but I am super excited about Dragonfly. How will that mission fit into this picture, and what could it realistically tell us about the potential for life, just the potential for life at Titan?
So I'm not a dragonfly scientist, but there was some dragonfly scientists on the team for this project, and I asked them several times. I could not get a clear answer. I
Oh
think it's
no.
hard for people to know. Of course, we don't know what we're going to discover with Dragonfly, and I think the way I see it, but again, I'm totally outside of this whole thing. The way I see it, it seems that Dragonfly was designed really as a Swiss Army knife. You know, to get the most big picture understanding of Titan. Understand, you know, key questions such as what really happens in terms of chemistry in the atmosphere, because we don't actually know that. We base all of these models and all of these analyses on assumptions of what kind exactly of molecules exist in the atmosphere of Titan, but all that we know for that comes from experiments in the lab, where people reproduce conditions of Titan's atmosphere, and they let the chemistry run, and then they analyze the molecules they get. But we don't know precisely what are the molecules that exist in Titan. We only have those analogs. So that's a big question, because all of the rest is driven by that. Because it's those molecules that then sort of sediment on the surface and then might undergo chemistry with liquid water as they touch the ice, and sometimes sink through the ice when there's melting events. So that's the big question. Also, I guess something that we really would like to know relative to this project is the scale, the nature of exchange between the surface and the ocean. Is there some sort of tectonic activity in the ice shell? You know, like we have plate tectonics on Earth, something similar might happen in ice shells. For now, we don't know if that's the case or not at Titan. We don't know the scale at which it might happen, how it manifests. So those are things that Dragonfly might constrain.
So since Dragonfly is basically kind of sort of that, I kind of want to say like starter mission to a world, right? We don't know what we don't know. So this is like the first Mars rovers, right? So we need to go and we need to start figuring out like what we have before we can send something more complicated, say like Perseverance, to actually start digging into things. So if you could design a dream mission to Titan and know that like you had the budget and it was just going to happen, what would your dream mission look like? What would you include? What would you want?
Yeah, I always have a hard time answering those questions. Because of course, if I had all the budget in the world and there was no issues, you know, with the engineering, I would drill. I would drill through the ice, get to the ocean, take a sample, grab a sample, a few samples, and then bring them back to Earth, where we can analyze them properly. So of course that would be the dream, but that's totally not realistic. By the way, it's crazy. The thickness of the ice shed is between 50 and 100 kilometers. That's orders of magnitude more than the deepest well we have drilled in ice at the moment. Like it's at least 10 times more.
It's very much on the Europa scale of ice shell then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that dream of drilling through the ice is very, very far away. We're absolutely not there yet. We're not there yet for Titan, and we're not there yet for Enceladus. So these things are far away in the future. Now, in the meantime, what do we want to learn the most? And I think it's really uh, my goal would be to find places where we have material from the ocean that might get to the surface.
Mhm.
I think if we really want to find life, this is something we should focus on. So that would be identifying, this potential tectonic in the ice shell, and then go with a lander with a little how do you call that? Excavator like
A little scoop.
arm, a little scoop, to be able to scratch this material and get the fresh one that's a little bit under, not weathered at the surface, etc. Get that and bring it back to Earth. I think in the meantime, that would be a dream mission, dream kind of mission.
That would be, I mean, yeah. What really makes me sad is as I get older and I watch these planetary missions launch, and we're going off to, Jupiter, and we're talking about going off to Uranus and Neptune. And it's like, yay, these are so exciting, and they probably won't happen in my lifetime at the rate we're going. So it planetary science, everybody, is a very long game when it comes to things that are not here on Earth. And it's exciting and also very frustrating. So we do have some audience questions, and I want to get to a couple of them. Zapfan is asking, is it assumed that this ocean is between two layers of ice and not in contact with the rock core?
Good question. There is some degree of uncertainty there. It is not clear. It depends on assumptions of interior modeling, whether you end up in your calculations with a layer of ice at the bottom of the ocean or not. And that's also a very relevant uncertainty when it comes to potential life in the ocean. Because of course, if there is no ice at the bottom of the ocean, then the ocean is able to interact with the rocky core. And that's always better for life because more stuff happens, chemically speaking. More nutrients might be delivered. You might have hydrothermal circulation occurring, stuff like this.
Right.
Now, even in the case where you'd have high pressure ice at the bottom of the ocean, actually that does not seem to prevent entirely exchange of matter and energy between the core and the ocean. So Christophe, who was on our team, actually the leader of our team, he works on this kind of problems. He has a few publications on that. And his models, they show that over long time scales, you still might have convection within the high pressure ice that would carry material from the core across the high pressure ice and then release it at the bottom of the ocean, as well as slightly warmed ice, slush. So not hydrothermal temperatures, but yeah, still something can happen.
So kind of loosely in that very, very oft debated term of cryovolcanism.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then Raul Santos is asking, so I think this is kind of like, I have a question sort of similar. What about Enceladus and even Europa? Are they a better choice for life than Titan? Should we focus on one or the other, or what's your I mean, what's your gut feeling on that, aside from what you've been doing research on?
I don't do a lot of gut feeling, but if I can transform the question a little bit, the way I like to ask this question is, what is more strategic to find life? Because it's possible that, for instance, if we knew everything about Titan and Enceladus, Titan would be a better choice for life, or a better place for life to develop. But we don't know what we don't know. And I think that's based on the things that we know right now. My feeling is that it's more strategic to go for Enceladus. But that's if our priority is to look for life right now. Because Enceladus is convenient because we have this plume that is ejected into space, so that gives us a little bit of access to ocean material. Enceladus also pretty easy place. Well, I mean, compared to Europa, but similarly easy as Titan in terms of global environments, radiation, stuff like this. So Enceladus, yes, is a good target because it's in a way it's a low-hanging fruit. It's easier in a way. Now, does that mean that I think it's a mistake to send missions such as Dragonfly to Titan? Not at all. It might be that the results of Dragonfly teach us that Titan is actually a better target. I don't know. I don't know what we will find, but we might find, actually material coming from the ocean that's pretty easy access, stuff like this. Now, in terms of less so easy access, stuff like this, Titan, of course, has more stuff happening. So the options are broader, right? There's organic molecules, but there also might be hydrothermal circulation. So you have several options for metabolisms, potential metabolisms. There are also several options for potential habitats. So in many ways, Titan offers more possibilities to search for life than Enceladus. But I think Enceladus right now is easier.
We've talked about with other scientists who have done stuff on the coastlines. So how the rivers interact with the oceans and what kind of sediment that might generate and how that might, cause chemical reactions in those areas where things are moving and that kind of thing. So it's like you said, there's a little bit more potential for more interactions than you would have on, say, just a world with an ice shell and subsurface liquid. So I agree with that. I like that. And so I guess just kind of to wrap it up, because we've reached the end of our time here. What's next for you? So you've figured out that if there is this kind of biology, it's not a lot and it would be very difficult to detect. What do you do now?
For Titan specifically?
For Titan and for you. So what's next on your plate, since you've recently changed where you're working too. So I know that you are all in shifting times. So what's next for Antonin?
So with the team we work with for the Titan stuff, we have one last thing that we want to write, which is about, because we focused on the delivery of organic molecules that come from the surface, not so much about what might happen between the core and the ocean. That's the third chapter of the story that we want to tell, is to focus on what happens with the core. That's going to get published sometime. Things can be slow in academia. So that's for the Titan stuff, which was, all of these Titan stuff was sort of outside of my affiliations, outside of my duties as a postdoc in Arizona. And now I've moved to Zurich, where I'm going to focus on the early Earth, specifically when it transitioned from a world without oxygen in its atmosphere to a world with oxygen in the atmosphere. I want to research the drivers of the delay that existed on Earth between the emergence of photosynthesis and the accumulation of dioxygen in the atmosphere. The reason for that is because I want to ask, is oxygen, atmospheric oxygen, a good biosignatures when we look at exoplanets? If you have a strong association between Earth-like life and photosynthesis and dioxygen in the atmosphere, then perhaps it's an interesting biosignature. But if it's not a necessary association, and perhaps even a rare one, to have Earth-like life and to have atmospheric oxygen, then maybe it's not so much of a good signature. And I think it's important to know that, because if we end up observing a bunch of exoplanets and detect no oxygen on any of them, we'd like to know if that's a bad sign or a good sign when it comes for life in the universe.
I love that, like, our conversation about what we're looking for has changed so much with the over the just in the last like decade and a half with, knowing that there are exoplanets out there, and now with JWST being able to tell you what their atmospheres are made of, where it's actually, now we really do need to understand what a biosignature would look like from a distance, because we can actually see them now. So I love that, and I love that you are looking at Earth to see sort of that same thing of, where in our history could we detect that, before we hit technosignature point, because technosignatures are a whole different ball of wax. Just being able to see like unintelligent life, not necessarily unintelligent life, but like not developed life, right? So where we're not doing pollution and things like this. I really like this idea, and I love, we only have Earth really to look at right now. So, until we find life elsewhere, this is what we've got to work with. So I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for your research. And when you have papers out on that, you let me know, because we will be having you back to talk about it. The origin of life is very important here at the SETI Institute. So thank you, Antonin, for being here today. It was fascinating, and I am super excited for all of the stuff we're learning about Titan. And congratulations on becoming a fellow in Zurich. So that is awesome news for you too. Thank you to everybody for being here today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for participating. If you enjoyed the conversation, do the things, like it, share it with your fellow space nerds, subscribe on YouTube so that you can keep up on space science interviews like this one. Next week, I'll be talking to Dr. Charles Edouard Boucaret from York University about lava planets, everybody. So I'm really excited about that. And as always, a reminder that SETI Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. Your bits, your subs, your super chats, your stars, all of these things go to keeping SETI Live running and making sure that I can bring all of these fabulous scientists to talk about their research with you. So thank you. And if you want to give a larger amount than something on one of these platforms, and thank you, Misadventures in Astro, for your 100 bits, go to our link down below here and hit that red donate button. And also don't forget to enter our giveaway. We are giving away several copies of the SETI board game that we were given. And all you have to do is go to this link right here. It's also in our chat. So click on that, enter that, and we'll let you know who wins the first copy next week during that talk about lava planets. So make sure you guys do all of the things and, comment, all of that stuff. All right. This has been fun and exciting, and I enjoyed it. I hope everybody else did too. Until next time, everybody, keep looking up and stay curious.